Okay, let's get right into it. Today, we are asking a pretty simple question about all those numbers we see ranking the best AI. Are we actually looking at real science, or are we just getting a really, really good sales pitch?
I mean, it's the question on everyone's mind, right? A new AI model drops practically every week. So how do we actually measure them? How do you compare what Google's doing to what OpenAI is doing or Anthropic? Well, the answer, supposedly, is pretty simple.
We use these things called benchmarks. Think of them like the SATs for AI. They're supposed to be these standardized, totally impartial tests that spit out a clean, objective score. The whole idea is that they tell us which model is smarter or faster or better at some specific thing. At least, that's the official story.
But our source for this explainer, the YouTube channel Pivot to AI, has a very different take. They're basically arguing that this whole system is not about objective measurement at all. It's a game, and it might just be rigged from the very beginning. So, how exactly does this faking even happen? Well, the source gives us a specific, really high-profile example that kind of lays out the entire playbook. So, here's the four-step playbook that the source lays out. A company, let's say OpenAI in this case, doesn't just take the test. No, they help create it. They get early access to it. And then they basically train their AI on the answer key. So when the model comes out and gets this spectacular, amazing score, is it a real breakthrough, or is it just a perfectly rehearsed performance?
And that really gets to the core of the problem here. When these models are trained specifically to beat the tests, the scores themselves stop meaning anything about real-world ability. The numbers just become the goal, totally disconnected from what the AI can actually do. So, if the industry's own metrics are broken, who's left to trust? I mean, the natural answer seems to be academia, right? You'd hope that some rigorous, independent researchers could step in and bring some actual scientific integrity back into this whole process. And hey, right on cue, a paper comes out from Oxford University's Reasoning with Machines lab, and it looks like it's ready to do just that. It's this huge undertaking with a very, very scientific-sounding goal. And the scale of this thing is honestly impressive. The researchers did a systematic review of 46,000 AI papers just to get a handle on the benchmarking landscape. I mean, that sounds like the very definition of thorough academic work. But, and this is a fascinating little catch, the tool that they used to do this massive scientific review was a chatbot itself. According to our source, using the very same technology you're supposed to be objectively evaluating, that's a huge methodological red flag. But even with that weird methodology, the paper's findings are pretty damning. It basically confirms what critics have been saying all along, that the huge majority of AI benchmarks are, to put it bluntly, scientific garbage. They're poorly defined, they're statistically weak, and at the end of the day, they don't even measure what they claim to be measuring. So, what's Oxford's solution? Well, it's about as academic as you can get. They want to create a classification system for all the errors, develop a checklist for people to follow, and create a framework to prove their tests are valid. It's a plan to fix bad science by just doing better science. But what if the problem was never about bad science to begin with? And this, right here, is where our source points out what they see as the paper's critical, fatal flaw. Its entire 82-page argument is built on one fundamental assumption, and that assumption might just be completely wrong. See, a benchmark can really have two different jobs. In science, its purpose is to find the truth, but in marketing, its purpose is to sell a product, to make it look good. The Oxford paper operates entirely in that first column, assuming everyone's goal is scientific integrity. But our source argues the reality is planted firmly in the second. And here's maybe the single most damning piece of evidence for that argument. In an 82-page paper analyzing exactly why AI benchmarks are so flawed, the word marketing shows up a grand total of 0 times. The entire commercial reason these benchmarks even exist and get promoted is just completely ignored. So, by totally ignoring the motivation, the paper gets the diagnosis wrong. It's treating a marketing tool like it's a broken scientific instrument. It's like giving a highway billboard a scientific peer review. It completely misses the point of why the billboard even exists. And our source argues this isn't just some innocent oversight. They claim that researchers who work this closely with the AI industry, Well, they can't possibly be that naive about all the commercial pressures going on. And that leads to a much more cynical way of looking at the paper itself. What if this paper isn't a fix for the problem at all? What if it's actually part of the problem? What if this big academic critique is actually a product that's being sold? Okay, so here's the final stark argument from our source. This paper isn't a call for scientific integrity, it's a business card. It's the Oxford Lab showing AI companies, hey, we know how to make benchmarks that look more scientific, basically helping them make their marketing claims more believable, making their lies, quote, a little less obvious. And that leaves us with a really unsettling question. We count on academia to be that independent check on corporate power and all the marketing spin. But if academic institutions start selling better spin, who is left to tell us what's real anymore?